Nobody, not the judge, not the jurors, not even Sean Diddy Combs himself, saw it coming when his 83-year-old mother, Janice Combs, was called to the witness stand, sending a jolt of shock through a Manhattan federal courthouse already crackling with the kind of scandal that makes headlines scream and tabloids fly off the shelves. The room, a cavern of polished wood and hushed whispers, fell into a silence so profound it seemed the walls themselves held their breath, as every eye locked onto the frail yet resolute figure of Janice, her silver hair catching the courtroom's harsh fluorescent light like a halo around a storm. This wasn't just another day in what had already been dubbed one of the most explosive celebrity trials in recent history. This was the moment a mother's truth threatened to dismantle the glittering empire of a music mogul who had danced through decades of fame with untouchable swagger. In a world where Diddy's name was synonymous with power, parties that never ended, deals that shaped the music industry, and a charisma that could charm the stars from the sky, the sight of his own mother stepping forward to testify against him felt like a betrayal ripped from a Greek tragedy. The air turned electric as Diddy's once unshakable facade crumbled, his face draining of color, his hands, usually so steady, gripping the edge of the defense table as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Janice, the woman who had raised him from a Harlem kid with big dreams to a global icon, was now the prosecution's most unexpected weapon. Her presence alone, a seismic shift in a case already teetering on the edge of sensational. The gallery, packed with reporters scribbling furiously and fans clutching their breath, buzzed with a low hum of disbelief. Could this really be happening? Was Janice Combs, the fiercely protective matriarch who had stood by her son through every triumph and scandal, about to tear down the legacy she'd helped build? The answer lay in the words she was about to speak, words that would ripple far beyond the courthouse, shaking the foundations of Diddy's world and leaving gossip columns ablaze with speculation. As Janice settled into the witness stand, her small frame dwarfed by the towering oak chair, Diddy's eyes betrayed a man staring into the abyss of his own unraveling. The courtroom, already steeped in the kind of drama that fuels late-night ex-posts and morning talk show debates, seemed to pulse with a new intensity, as if everyone sensed the gravity of what was unfolding. Diddy, who had sauntered into the trial's opening days with the confidence of a man who'd dodged scrutiny before, now looked like a son haunted by the one verdict he couldn't charm his way out of: his mother's. As lawyers, a slick team in tailored suits exchanged nervous glances, their whispered strategies faltering as Janice adjusted her glasses and prepared to take the oath. The prosecution, led by a sharp-eyed attorney whose reputation for dismantling powerful men preceded her, stood straighter, sensing a tide turning in their favor. This wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was a personal reckoning, a moment where the private pain of a family collided with the public spectacle of a celebrity downfall. Janice's decision to testify wasn't listed in any court filings, wasn't whispered in the gossip rags that had been dissecting Diddy's every move for months. It was a bombshell that caught even the most seasoned reporters off guard, their pens freezing mid-sentence as they struggled to process the implications. For gossip readers, this was the ultimate hook: a mother, the bedrock of Diddy's life, stepping into the spotlight not to defend her son, but to expose him. The question on everyone's lips was simple yet electrifying. What could Janice possibly say that would bring her to this point? And how could Diddy, the man who seemed to have it all, face the one person he could never outrun? In a trial already pulsing with high-stakes drama, this was the moment a mother's truth threatened to topple a mogul's legacy, a turning point that would be dissected in every corner of the internet, from TMZ's screaming headlines to the X threads where fans and foes alike would wage war over Diddy's fate. The case had already been a circus. Allegations of abuse, coercion, and a shadowy network of parties that blurred the line between hedonism and harm had painted Diddy as a man whose empire was built on more than just music. But nothing could have prepared the world for Janice Combs, the woman who had cheered her son's rise from Harlem's streets to the penthouses of Los Angeles, taking the stand to deliver a testimony that would redefine the narrative. The courtroom, with its rows of polished benches and the faint hum of air conditioning, became a stage for a drama more gripping than any reality show, as Janice's presence alone signaled that the trial was no longer just about legal arguments. It was about family, loyalty, and the cost of unchecked power. Reporters, their laptops glowing in the dim light, typed furiously, knowing this was the kind of story that could make a career, the kind that would have readers refreshing their feeds for days. For gossip audiences, the allure was irresistible: a mother-son showdown, a betrayal laced with love, and a glimpse into the private world of a celebrity whose public image was teetering on the edge. The stakes couldn't be higher, and as Janice raised her right hand to swear the oath, the courtroom braced for a revelation that would echo far beyond its walls. Janice's testimony, delivered with the quiet strength of a woman who had seen it all, was a masterclass in shattering illusions, each word landing like a carefully aimed dart in the heart of Diddy's carefully curated persona. She began with the kind of raw honesty that silenced even the most cynical observers, recounting a lifetime of watching her son transform from a charismatic dreamer to a man consumed by the very success she'd prayed for. "I raised Sean as a single mother after his father was murdered," she said, her voice steady but tinged with a sorrow that made the jurors lean forward. "I worked multiple jobs to give him opportunities, to make him strong, to help him become something extraordinary. And he did. He exceeded every dream I had for him." The courtroom softened for a moment, caught in the warmth of a mother's pride, but Janice's expression darkened as she continued, her words painting a picture of a son who had lost his way. She spoke of private conversations that haunted her, moments when Diddy's own words revealed a chilling truth. "Sometimes people get hurt. That's business," he'd told her, his voice casual as if human lives were just collateral damage in his quest for dominance. The gallery gasped as she described finding lists in his home office, papers with women's names scrawled alongside notes like "handled" or "potential problem." A discovery that turned her stomach and forced her to confront the reality she'd tried to ignore. "I asked him about those lists," she said, her eyes fixed on the prosecutor, "and he snatched the paper from my hands, told me it was business, nothing for me to worry about. But I knew. A mother knows when her child is hiding something." The revelation sent a ripple through the room, reporters typing furiously as they realized this wasn't just testimony, it was a window into a world of secrets that Diddy had fought to keep hidden. The courtroom's atmosphere grew heavier as Janice recounted a specific moment that shattered her faith in her son, the 2024 CCTV footage of Diddy assaulting Cassie in a hotel corridor, a video that had already set the internet ablaze and fueled endless speculation. "I called him the moment I saw it," she said, her voice trembling for the first time. "Devastated doesn't begin to describe it. I asked him how he could do such a thing, and he told me it was a difficult time in their relationship, that I was seeing it out of context, that he wasn't that person anymore." The prosecutor, sensing the weight of her words, pressed gently, "Did you believe him?" Janice's response was a single, devastating word: "No." The room seemed to contract, as if her answer had sucked the air out of it, and even Diddy, who had been staring at the table, flinched visibly. She went on to describe glimpses of his rage over the years, not directed at her, but at staff, at business associates, at anyone who dared challenge his authority. "The Sean in that video wasn't a stranger to me," she said, her voice breaking. "I'd seen that anger before, and it broke my heart to realize the accusations weren't just rumors." The gossip world thrives on moments like these, where the polished veneer of celebrity cracks to reveal something raw and real, and Janice's words were a goldmine. A mother's heartbreak, a son's betrayal, and a truth that no amount of PR spin could bury. The testimony wasn't just about damning revelations. It was a slow, deliberate peeling back of layers, each one exposing more of the man behind the myth. Janice spoke of her growing unease in the early 2000s, when Diddy's empire was at its peak, parties sprawling across his Miami and Los Angeles mansions, filled with A-listers and whispers of excess. "Success came so fast," she said, her eyes distant as she recalled those heady days. "Everyone was saying yes to him, treating him like he was above the rules, and I saw him start to believe it." She described unsettling moments during her visits, young women who seemed disoriented, staff who moved with the wary caution of those afraid to make a mistake, rooms she was suddenly barred from entering. One memory stood out, a 2008 visit to his Miami home, where she arrived unannounced and found the aftermath of a party that felt more like a cover-up than a celebration. "Staff were collecting phones from rooms," she said, her voice tight. "One young woman was crying as a security guard escorted her out. Sean was furious when he saw me, told me I should have called." The prosecutor presented a photo, marked as Exhibit 42, showing the pool house at Diddy's Los Angeles estate. "He called it a studio," Janice said, studying the image, "but he was secretive about it. I wasn't allowed inside, which was strange. I'd always been welcome everywhere before." The implication hung heavy. Gossip readers would eat up the suggestion of hidden rooms and dark secrets, their imaginations running wild with what went on behind those locked doors. Janice's testimony wasn't just a litany of accusations. It was a mother's anguished journey from denial to reckoning, a narrative that resonated with anyone who's ever loved someone flawed. She spoke of confronting Diddy in late 2023, after Cassie's lawsuit brought fresh allegations to light. "I called him immediately," she said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I needed to hear the truth, not what his lawyers were telling him to say, just the truth between a mother and son." In a New York apartment, alone with her son, she saw a crack in his armor. He was tired that day, she recalled. The facade slipped. He didn't admit everything, but he said something I'll never forget. "Mom, you don't build what I've built by playing by everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt. That's business." The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear the faint scratch of pencils as court sketch artists captured the moment. Janice's voice quivered as she continued. "That's not how I raised him. That's not business. That's not right." For gossip readers, this was the kind of quote that would dominate headlines. A soundbite that encapsulated the fall of a titan, delivered by the one person who knew him best. Diddy, sitting just feet away, stared at the table, his shoulders slumped, as if the weight of his mother's words was more than he could bear. The emotional climax came not in words, but in a single, searing moment of silence, as Janice locked eyes with her son for the first time since taking the stand. It was a glance that spoke volumes, a mother's love tangled with disappointment, a son's betrayal mingled with a flicker of understanding. The courtroom, already gripped by her testimony, seemed to hold its collective breath, reporters pausing their frantic typing, jurors leaning forward, even the judge's stern expression softening for a fleeting second. This wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was a family tragedy playing out on a public stage, the kind of raw human drama that gossip outlets thrive on. Janice's gaze held steady, conveying a mother's unwavering love but also her demand for accountability, a silent plea for her son to face the truth. Diddy, for all his wealth and fame, looked small in that moment, not the music mogul who dominated charts and headlines, but a son confronting the one judgment he couldn't escape. The exchange lasted only seconds, but it was enough to etch itself into the minds of everyone present, a moment that would be replayed in countless articles and social media posts, fueling debates about loyalty, power, and redemption. The prosecution, sensing the emotional weight of Janice's testimony, moved carefully as if handling a fragile artifact. They presented a letter she'd written to Diddy after his arrest, a document marked as an exhibit, where she poured out her love, but also her refusal to excuse his actions. "I told him I'd always love him," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But I couldn't stand behind what he'd done. Lives were at stake, not just his." The letter, read aloud in court, was a gut punch, a mother's plea for her son to reclaim the values she'd instilled in him. Diddy's response, she revealed, was a mix of anger and desperation. He said I didn't understand what was at stake, that his whole life was on the line. But Janice stood her ground, telling him that the truth mattered more than his empire. The prosecutor's final question cut to the core. "Why did you agree to testify today?" Janice drew a deep breath, her eyes sweeping the room before settling on the jurors. "Because the truth matters," she said. "Because accountability matters. Because I raised my son to be better than this. And because the women who were hurt deserve someone to acknowledge their pain." The words landed like a verdict, and for gossip readers, they were pure dynamite. A mother's moral stand, a call for justice, and a story that would spark endless speculation about Diddy's fate. The defense, clearly rattled, approached cross-examination with unusual restraint, as if aware that attacking Janice could backfire spectacularly. Their lead attorney, a silver-haired veteran known for dismantling witnesses, focused on portraying her testimony as emotional rather than factual, suggesting her concerns were based on assumptions rather than hard evidence. Janice, unflinching, acknowledged the limits of what she'd seen firsthand, but stood firm on the truth of her son's words and actions. "He told me enough," she said, her voice unwavering. "I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt as his mother." As she stepped down from the stand, her back straight and her dignity intact, she passed the defense table without looking at Diddy, who watched her go with an expression that mixed heartbreak and resignation. The courtroom buzzed as she exited, reporters already crafting headlines about the mother who broke her son's empire, while fans in the gallery whispered about whether this was the end for Diddy's reign. The ripple effects of Janice's testimony extended beyond the courtroom, amplified by the testimony of Dr. Margaret Chen, a family psychology expert brought in to contextualize the moment. "What we saw today was remarkable," Dr. Chen told the court, her calm authority cutting through the chaos. "For a mother to testify against her son in a case like this suggests a moral tipping point, a moment when the dissonance between love and recognizing harm becomes unbearable." Her analysis, laced with terms like power insulation and cognitive dissonance, gave gossip readers a new lens to dissect the drama, turning Janice's stand into a psychological case study that would dominate talk shows and podcasts. The trial, already a media frenzy, now had a new focal point. A mother's betrayal that was also an act of love, a story that would keep readers clicking, sharing, and debating for weeks. Could Janice Combs' unflinching testimony be the final crack in Diddy's carefully curated legacy? That question hung over the courthouse as the day ended, fueling a firestorm of speculation that would light up X, Reddit, and every gossip outlet from New York to Los Angeles. For readers, the story was more than just a trial update. It was a saga of family, power, and the price of truth, a narrative that demanded attention and refused to let go. As the courtroom emptied, the weight of Janice's words lingered, a reminder that even the mightiest empires can fall when a mother decides to speak.